Chapter 1. Sweat trickled down Sarah's temples. A drop crashed to the floor, landing a centimeter away from the basement door. The rusted handle loomed in front of her, an unassuming adversary in their age-old game of cat and mouse. She cast one quick glance over her shoulder. Their blue and white bungalow looked the same as ever, complete with its hodgepodge of bright flowers in the front yard, the lace curtains hanging from every window, and the familiar, worn-out furniture. Yet nothing was the same. That basement door, closed off, stagnant, and antiquated, whispered secrets she longed to decode. It was the forbidden fruit she couldn't resist, the locked diary she'd inevitably pry open. A sly smile inched onto her lips as she turned her attention back to the door, her fingers tracing the cool, dusty surface. The sun continued to bathe their home in an orange glow, barely illuminating the basement's ebony abyss. Surely there would be answers in that darkness, unspoken truths lurking in its shadows. She bit her lip, her mind racing with unanswered questions and memories of her parents' hushed conversations when they thought she wasn't listening. "Sarah!" She heard her mother call desperately from somewhere above, tears stinging her eyes. Sarah hesitated, steeling herself for the potential consequences. "Don't open it, Sarah." But curiosity was relentless. It gnawed at her like a hunger she couldn't ignore. She shook off the last vestiges of fear and flicked the switch, a feeble and futile attempt to banish shadows. An inky darkness enveloped the space, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The air was thick, heavy, with a musty stench that prickled her nose hairs. Something scuttled in the distance, sending her heart pounding against her ribs. The sound echoed through the gloom, accentuating her isolation. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she pushed open the door. "Mother," she called, hesitation coating her voice. "I cannot resist any longer." The murmur of a TV upstairs confirmed her mother wasn't nearby, but her father answered nonetheless. "Sarah, no. You promised me you'd stay away." "Meet father?" she asked bluntly, craving the truth like never before. The door swung shut, and silence engulfed her once again. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a symphony of nerves and anticipation, yet she refused to back down. She took a tentative step, wincing at the creak of a floorboard under her foot. With a deep, fortifying breath, she proceeded, an arduous journey to the bottom of the basement stairs, where darkness cloaked everything. Her fingers brushed against banisters, rough from years of neglect, and she inched her way down the steps, hesitantly, descending into that enigmatic world that hid beneath their quaint family home. An eerie silence embraced her. She strained her ears, anticipating more noises from earlier, but the air remained undisturbed, expectant. Why the apprehension? Was it simply the unnerving sight of deep, unlit spaces, or the echoing whispers of caution from her parents? "Sarah," her father's voice quavered, "if you truly care about us, you will turn around now." His desperate plea was like an icy dagger to her heart, yet something indefinable spurred her on. She reached the last stair and felt the cold concrete floor beneath her foot. "You cannot unlearn what you find beyond that door," warned her mother. A strange sense of trepidation, tinged with intrigue, washed over Sarah. Her curiosity gnawed at her, growing stronger with each passing day, making it impossible for her to ignore the hidden world beneath their family home. Despite her parents' warnings, she found herself captivated by the intrigue that hovered over the basement door. She'd never been allowed to explore it before now, and the allure of the unknown was too strong to resist. Her breath turned shallow and quick, nerves dancing like an orchestra in her stomach. She stretched out her hand, inching towards the doorknob, the metal cold to her fingertips. As her hand slipped around it, she paused, taking solace in the banality of the gesture, as if this were any other door in the house. But as she turned the knob, an awkward sensation took over as the door slowly gave way. Just as Sarah anticipated, darkness met her on the other side, so thick it weighed on her eyes. But she pressed forth, trusting her instincts. As her hands navigated the dim room, a sliver of light caught her gaze, emanating gently from a nearby window at the far end. The light seemed an invite, coaxing her further into the mystery. She cautiously moved toward it, her feet silent on the worn wooden floorboards, until she reached the imposing barrier of crates and boxes stacked haphazardly against the wall. They stood like colossal, menacing sentinels, their contents unknown but strangely impersonal. Sarah traced a finger over their seams, each cardboard edge threatening to spill the secrets within. But what lay behind these silent guardians beckoned more. She inhaled deeply, the dust in the air catching her throat as she teetered, considering the possibility of returning to the familiarity of the upstairs. Her hand, seemingly with a life of its own, pushed the first obstacle in her way aside. Chapter 2. Sarah adjusted her eyes to the dimness, venturing towards the murky corners of the basement. The dust particles danced in the lone beam of light that cascaded from the solitary window high up on the wall. Her once steady breath now arrived in small, uneven puffs. The thickness of the air wrapped around her throat, as if it anticipated her intrusion, restraining her. "What's the big fuss about?" Sarah whispered, trying to assuage her anxiety. "It couldn't hurt any more than my parents' evasive tactics." Reaching out, she gingerly traced a line in the dust coating the nearest box, half listening as the distant hum of the world above filtered down. She wondered if her parents even noticed her absence, if her disobedience had sent cracks through their carefully constructed veneer of normalcy. With fleeting trepidation lingering in the back of her mind, Sarah began to carefully navigate the maze of boxes and crates. Her inquisitive mind yearned to comprehend what it was she wasn't supposed to uncover. A delicate sheen of dust clung to the boxes, and she disturbed a tiny cloud that swirled lazily to the ground as she passed. The mystery only deepened when she discovered the hidden room, its door cunningly camouflaged behind a jigsaw of aged planks, almost invisible unless one truly looked for it. She pushed away the planks, sending up a puff of dust and unveiling a secret chamber, silent and shadowy. Her breath caught again as her heart skipped a beat. A flickering light caught her attention, a dim yet pulsating circle emanating from the center of the room. Cautious but propelled forward, Sarah eased closer. What she discovered took her breath away. A contraption. Its age was evident in the ornate metal scrollwork, resembling an elaborate computation from years of neglect. The center of the device enshrouded a crystalline object, pulsating with a light she'd never before witnessed, not quite emerald, yet somehow alive. Thick, almost gelatinous wires emanated from the cage, coiling around the room like a menagerie of ancient serpents. She felt a deep sense of dread, as well as overwhelming fascination, as she stepped into the chamber. Her fingertips tingled, and time seemed to slow down around her, electricity crackling in the air. A whisper echoed through the room, sending a chill up Sarah's spine. "I wouldn't get any closer if I were you." Her heart skipped a beat. Had it been her imagination? Or was this a voice that had lain dormant for centuries within the hidden walls of the basement? She hesitated before taking another step. Her fear and curiosity mingled into an intoxicating cocktail. Her eyes scanned the room once more, attempting to decipher the source of the eerie voice, but she found nothing but shadows, intermingling with the dust particles. As she was about to dismiss it, she heard it again. "Do not come closer, child." This time, the voice seemed more urgent, almost desperate. It was a faint whisper, worn by time, yet still powerful enough to reverberate through her very being. Sarah's hands trembled. The hair on her arms stood on end. A cold breeze swept through the chamber, flowing past her like an unseen hand. Her heart raced, and she gripped the edge of the ancient contraption, her nails digging tightly into the protective covering. The voice spoke once more, chilling her to the core. "Turn around, child. Whoever you are, know that this chamber contains a power far greater than anything you could imagine. Would you dare to release it?" Pausing, Anne thought slowly before answering. Sarah shook her head, incredulity and denial clouding her judgment. She felt a magnetic pull, drawing her to the shimmering core within the archaic device. As if answering her unspoken question, the voice sighed. "Your curiosity will be your doom, child. Turn back now before it's too late." "I understand who you are. Who are you?" she asked, squinting through the shadows, hoping to connect with. "But who are you?" she asked, squinting through the shadows, hoping to connect with the light forms. She started scratching her chest and scratching her chest. She thought she might get a good sketch of it. "But who are you?" she asked, squinting through the shadows, hoping to connect with the light form. But nothing was apparent except the lingering echo of an ancient voice. The cold breeze now blew stronger, and the shimmering emerald core of the device hummed a deep, throbbing pulse. With every heartbeat, she understood she was being drawn to it, against her fearful instincts and against the pleas of the eerie voice. "I can't," she muttered, barely above a whisper. Her shaking hand reached out, Her fingers splayed as if to absorb the strange energy emanating from the core. She sensed a pulse beating in rhythm with her own, and it filled her with a strange sense of connection, though it also provoked fear. The mysterious voice rang out once more, but this time it sounded weak, almost pleading. "Please, child, leave before it's too late. You don't understand the power you've come across." Sarah felt the tiny hairs on her arms stand tall, and she shivered before pulling away. An unsettling feeling gripped her, a strong undercurrent of danger lurking beneath the attraction to the device. The insidious words of the mysterious whispering presence echoed, "You don't understand the power you've come across." Suddenly regretful, she retracted her hand, leaving the ancient pulsating core alone and imprisoned within the archaic device. She couldn't comprehend this cryptic power. Was it malicious? Protective? And who had once owned and created this object that seemed almost alive with energy? The questions tugged on her mind, nearly as intense as the strange pull she had felt toward the pulsating emerald core. Sarah lingered near the ancient device, wondering about her next steps. An invisible battle tugged and tore at her emotional state, making her heart leap and shudder in equal measure. Her hands shook from the adrenaline rush of her discovery, and she swallowed hard to steady her breath. As she backed away from the machine, reluctance and yearning warred within her. She so desperately wanted to understand it, yet feared what she didn't comprehend. Chapter 3. A figure unfurled from the miasmic darkness, tentacles of midnight twisting, writhing, and binding together. A hideous monstrosity of darkness materializing before Sarah. It was grotesque, a malignant entity that seemed transiently human in its construction, before being swallowed by the ravenous darkness lurking behind its murky eyes. Paralyzing dread rooted Sarah to the spot, and all she could manage was a pitiful croak. "What? Oh, are you?" she stammered, inching away from the creature that now confronted her. Apprehension inched along her spine, but she couldn't shake an inexplicable trace of fascination laced with sorrow. The figure, vaguely human-shaped, remained eerily still. Dark tendrils snaked around its arms and twisted into a sickening parody of fingers, terminating in sharp black points. "You've set me free," it hissed, eyes gleaming in the dim light. A low guttural chuckle reverberated as if the air around them vibrated with malice. Sarah took another step back, unable to tear her gaze away. "What is that?" she stammered, lips trembling. "A creature." The entity's voice was cold as steel. It slithered closer, seeming to take morbid delight in Sarah's terror. A strange sadness seemed to permeate its darkness before sinking back into the shadows, hidden by its own obscurity. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her courage momentarily restored by the sinister entity's vulnerability. "A creature of the ether, known as the Creature," it replied, its voice shifting from stilted to eerily casual. "I am bound to this place, and you have released me." "But why?" Sarah's grip on the crate tightened. "But why are you bound here?" she asked, unable to pull her eyes away from the entity. It let out a melodramatic sigh. A foolish mistake of a man looking to bend the laws of nature, seeking power where he should not have dared. Foolishness born from ambition led him down a dangerous path. Sarah's brow furrowed. Who was this man? Was my creator. Or rather, he sought to become like me. But alas, he underestimated the true nature of such desires, my creation, twisted and grotesque. Nor was it a creature that expressed a semblance of humanity. Instead, it morphed and decayed into something horrific, a reflection of his deeply warped psyche. Creatures don't have feelings, Sarah pointed out bluntly. We are but shadows of existence. The creature paused, regarding her with what could only be described as curiosity. Few creatures possess such insight. You speak truth, child. A creeping unease settled into Sarah's bones, and she began to feel quite isolated in the presence of this dark entity. It was as though it held a knowledge she yearned to understand, to reconcile with the unsolved mysteries plaguing her life thus far. What power did he seek? She tried asking again, trying to maintain her composure even as a shiver ran down her spine. The creature swallowed, as if digesting something unpalatable. Power. He sought power. He craved control over the world within and beyond the veil of death, to bend the rules governing time and space, to cheat his own mortality. His own arrogance turned his noble intentions into a ghastly pursuit. Its words carried an unexpected poignancy, echoing in Sarah's mind as she mulled over her own desires. What exactly does that have to do with my opening the door? The creature sighed again, this time more reluctantly, and lowered its voice. Bound me to that door, Sarah, hoping to keep my abilities contained and unleashed them only when he wished to harness their power. And what abilities does a creature of the ether possess? She asked, unable to restrain her curiosity. More than I cared to enumerate, particularly in the presence of one so young and impressionable. It couldn't help but let its voice drop with a theatrical touch of emphasis upon the word impressionable. Sarah wasn't amused. I think I can handle it. Or rather, I choose to take the risk, Sarah responded resolutely, determination gilding her voice. Will you reveal yourself fully if I give you my trust? The creature's eyes grew wide, and it bowed its gnarled head slightly. In doing so, it exposed a glimpse of regret. Only if you promise not to judge me harshly, for I am anything but the mirror image of human kindness. Sarah reached out cautiously towards the creature, her fingertips brushing against its cool black skin. Very well. I accept your offer, it murmured, voice laced with a solemn undertone. It then began to unfurl itself from the shadows, tendrils retreating and forms solidifying. The creature stood over 7 feet tall, with twisted, almost humanoid features, yet the inky darkness that cloaked it concealed its body's complexion and nuances, further adding to its eerie appearance. I am far older than my appearance would lead you to believe, the creature commenced, eyes glowing like twin constellations amidst the black void of its face. My being encompasses unimaginable power, something I wish you to be cautious with whilst under my tutelage. Sarah gulped, attempting to maintain unwavering eye contact, despite her growing apprehension. "And what is the nature of this tutelage?" she asked, her voice no more than a whisper. "To unleash your potential and provide guidance," the creature replied. "This is something my creator aspired to do, but fell short." Chapter 4. The musty smell of the basement wafted through Sarah's nostrils, evoking a sense of unease she'd never before experienced. Her heart galloped in her chest like a wild stallion as the creature ominously lumbered closer, the inky blackness that cloaked it concealing its formidable size. As its jagged silhouette grew larger, Sarah couldn't help but recall her father's strict demeanor and stern warnings. If only she'd heeded them, she'd still be safe within the sanctuary of her home. But alas, they faded in the face of her insatiable curiosity. She could still hear her heartbeat hammering wildly in her ears as tendrils of darkness brushed against her skin, raising the fine hairs all over her body. Her breaths were shallow, and she squeezed her eyes shut in anticipation of the creature's next words. "What do you want from me?" Sarah forced out, struggling to keep her trembling voice steady. "I desire to tell you the story of your family," it answered cryptically. "A tale far darker and more intricate than you could ever imagine." It could sense Sarah's incredulity. "You wish to recount my family's history? How could you possibly know anything about us?" she asked skeptically, searching the creature's dimly perceived visage for any sign of deception. "The man who bound me here was your great-great-grandfather, or so I've been led to understand. I was privy to his innermost thoughts and desires," the creature explained cryptically. The shadows that cloaked it waved gently in an invisible breeze. He spent years attempting to unlock the secrets of immortality, but his success came at a steep price. "What price?" Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing. "Succeeded in binding my essence to this realm, but doing so also bound his soul to me and mine to his." "You mean to say that my great-great-grandfather's soul is trapped with yours?" Sarah gasped, the implication of the creature's words slowly sinking in. A strange sadness tugged at her heart, imagining two souls eternally tethered together in this bleak, hidden realm. "Indeed," the creature answered heavily, "a cruel twist of fate I was never intended to bear." The dimly lit chamber echoed with a profound silence, amplifying the crushing weight of their interlinked fates. Sarah stared at the creature, her mind spinning with the revelation of what lay hidden beneath the surface of her family's history. Her hands clasped tightly, the ivory knuckles whitening in the throes of her emotions. A wave of sorrow crested and crashed around the pair, sinking into the ancient shadows cast by the walls. "How can this be true?" Sarah questioned, her voice wavering with a mix of incredulity and grief. "That destiny would bring our families together like this." "What do I do?" Sarah whispered, clutching her forehead in frustration. The creature creaked forward, tendrils curling like a lover fondling her through the ether. "Patience, child," it hissed, inching closer. "There are 2 avenues of redemption available to you." Beads of sweat trickled down Sarah's face as the creature spoke again. "Option is to sever the bond between your ancestors and myself, releasing both of our souls from this eternal cycle. But be warned, the process is fraught with peril and promises to be physically taxing beyond comprehension. Sarah felt the darkness within her coiling, and a sense of resolve solidified in her heart. Then I guess I have no choice. I'll do whatever I have to in order to save my family. The creature regarded her thoughtfully before nodding slowly in approval. Then I shall teach you the ritual to break the ancient bond between our kindred spirits. Prepare yourself, child, for the journey ahead will be a grueling one. Lead the way, Sarah said bravely, retreating towards the surface with a newfound determination. The creature followed her out of the unassuming cellar door, leaving behind the mysteries that wove themselves throughout its thick wooden walls. As they neared the main floor, Sarah's heart raced with a mix of apprehension and excitement. If she did this, there'd be no turning back. Her family's legacy would be forever changed. Her parents had always warned her to stay away from the basement, but what she discovered that night revealed a deeper-rooted secret, hidden for generations. The ritual to sever the bond is enacted during the hour of twilight, deep within the forest surrounding your home. The creature's voice brought Sarah back to the present moment. "Twilight is upon us," she whispered as she looked out the window. The sun dipped below the horizon and the sky blushed various shades of pink and orange. She felt as if she were embarking on an unprecedented journey, one that she could never have imagined when she'd first wandered into that musty old cellar. Sarah turned around to face the creature, its dark form now lit by the fading sunlight. "Let's begin," she said, fighting within herself to mask her fears. As they stepped out into the cool evening air, the forest enveloped them. Sarah led the way, twigs snapping and leaves crunching beneath their feet as the sun's last rays kissed the treetops. An air of foreboding seemed to descend as they journeyed deeper into the woods, and twilight embraced them like a dark cloak. The weight of her decision pressed down on her, the enormity of what she was about to attempt a suffocating thought. Chapter 5. In the hushed stillness that enveloped the basement, Sarah lay sprawled on the cold, hard concrete floor. Every muscle throbbed in agony, though she couldn't tell whether the pain emanated from her body or her soul. The air hung heavy with the acrid stench of charred electricity, nearly smothering her beneath a cloak of fear and uncertainty. A few feet away, the creature writhed and thrashed on the ground, eyes alight with a fury that seemed primal and untamed. It appeared otherworldly, a mass of shadows and dark tendrils pulsating with a strange energy. The ritual had taken its toll on both of them. Sarah's vision blurred in and out of focus, making the scene appear almost dreamlike in the dwindling twilight. This ordeal left her feeling weightless, yet filled with the burden of what could only be described as an overwhelming sadness. Each breath came as a struggle, and she yearned for nothing more than the chance to lie down and rest, to forget this horrific, nightmarish experience. But her curious nature refused to concede defeat easily, and a thin thread of determination still managed to cling to her consciousness. The creature's thrashes grew weaker until it finally ceased its movement entirely. Its eyes, now dull and lifeless, stared blankly at the ceiling as Sarah tried to catch her breath. dust floated through the air, gradually coating her face in clothes, reminding her of the grim reality of her predicament. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the cold, hard surface of the floor, emotions warring within her. Behind the tiredness, the overwhelm, she felt a trace of triumph, a sense of accomplishment that she'd had survived what many would consider unsurvivable. And just when her thoughts began to drift off into dreams of relief, reality struck and she felt a renewed strength surge through her. She sat up on her knees, catching her breath and gathering what little energy she had left. She saw the creature slump beside her, seemingly lifeless. The darkness surrounding it pulsed weakly, a considerably weaker version of the energy that had trapped it all those years ago. Sarah stared at the creature, her heart pounding in her chest. As she peered into those dead eyes, it finally clicked. The creature wasn't evil. It had merely been bound to it, forever trapped within the confines of the laboratory that had been hidden beneath her family's Victorian home. With a deep breath, she reached out, laying her palm against the creature's inky black skin, touching for the first time the raw and unfamiliar texture. An electric jolt surged through them both, blood-curdling screams echoing off the cold stone walls, and the creature, finally freed, started to crackle and sizzle like a dying fire. As it disappeared into wisps of smoke, Sarah staggered back, panting heavily. The air hung dense and charged with an energy that seemed to hum softly in her ears. As wisps of black smoke dissipated into the dark corners of the basement, Sarah lingered there, trembling with exhaustion and a strange concoction of elation and dread. The creature was gone. Sarah had released it from its bondage, but she felt a pang of sadness knowing that she'd never have the chance to fully comprehend the creature's experience, or thank it for finally giving her answers. She slumped against the chilly concrete wall, her shoulders burning under the weight of her newfound knowledge, when a sudden sound arrested her attention. A quiet voice rose from the far corner, whispering words that sent a shiver down her spine. She sucked in a sharp breath, uncertainty rippling through her veins like an unwelcome guest. "What did you just say?" she asked, warily approaching the quiet rumbling of words. "I told you, I'm not gone yet. Now, my dear Sarah, I owe you an explanation." The creature's raspy voice cut through the silence as it materialized from the shadows of the corner. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. What had she done? Sarah stared at the creature, swallowing the lump in her throat. A bead of sweat trickled down her forehead, and she tried to stem the tide of fear that threatened to engulf her. The creature wore an expression she couldn't quite place. Was it a ghost of a smile or merely a trick of the murky light? Its inky black form was less intimidating this time, and it looked almost vulnerable huddled in the corner. Sarah slowly lowered herself to the ground, settling onto her haunches opposite the creature. The air was still heavy with the acrid scent of electricity, but the throbbing in her head had subsided somewhat. "Go on then, explain." The creature breathed in deeply, its chest expanding beneath delicate layers of texture like a roiling sea. "There is much to tell, child. My existence extends beyond the confines of this laboratory, deep into the recesses of your family tree. Your ancestor did not just bind me here for my perceived power. No, it was much more than that. I am a guardian, a sentry to the entrance of the in-between realm. Sarah tilted her head in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? Every family has a secret, Sarah, and yours is no exception. Your bloodline, the one that once belonged to your great-great-grandfather, was chosen to protect the world from creatures that slip through the cracks between life and death. Her eyes widened. Chapter 6. The pale morning light filtered through the cracks of the cellar window, casting spectral shadows across Sarah's quivering form as she lay sprawled on the cold, hard floor, the remnants of last night's battle weighing heavily on her aching muscles. The scent of damp earth lingered in the air, mingling with the metallic tang that reminded her of the expelled energy pulsating through her veins. The room seemed different now, denser, weightier, suffused with an inexplicable darkness that clung to her like an oppressive shroud. My ancestor sought to bind me to achieve immortality, the creature continued, its eerie eyes scanning Sarah as if searching for answers she hadn't even contemplated. For I am a creature of the aether, a being born of the shadows, untouched by the tethers of time. Biding me, he hoped to maintain his youth and vitality, prolonging his life in a twisted masquerade of eternal youth. A chill swept through Sarah as the creature's words reverberated through her mind. Immortality? Her ancestor had dabbled in something so dark and twisted, seeking to bend the very fibers of reality to his will? The thought sent ripples of discomfort coursing through her. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering involuntarily. You've become a part of this, Sarah, the creature continued, more so than you know. You possess a power within you that's awakening, something that will change your life forever. Sarah's heart pounded as her curiosity piqued, a feeling of apprehension and anticipation growing inside her. What do you mean? The bond that bound me here was sealed by blood, specifically your ancestors' blood. And now that the bond has been broken, a piece of me resides within you. This transfer of energy can only occur once every few generations, with the bond growing stronger with each reawakening. Sarah blinked, trying to absorb the information her mysterious companion presented. The air around them crackled with the scent of ozone and a sense of deep and timeless knowing. What kind of power, she wondered, brow furrowed as she regarded the creature. The creature's eyes flickered, as if reading her thoughts, the ability to heal, to protect, to love, but also the power to destroy. A duality, much like the nature of my own existence. The key lies in harnessing the energy responsibly. With practice, you can control it, young Sarah. Shadows danced and flickered in the dim light, weaving an intricate tapestry of mystery. The laboratory was a stark contrast to the gentle, orderly life Sarah had previously known. Every blink sent electric sparks across her vision, a lingering trace of the night before. She bit her lip, trying to summon understanding from her muddled thoughts. I don't understand. Why give me this power if it can destroy? The creature regarded her thoughtfully. Destruction requires intention, my dear. Aggression, hostility, anger. Embrace the darker aspects of your soul, and your power will turn destructive. But if you learn to harness it with compassion, love, and self-restraint, it will be a force for good. Sarah felt a surge of defiance rising in her, fueled by the desire to change the world, to heal the pain and suffering she had witnessed in her life. She declared, "I know what you're saying, but I think I can do it. I think I can learn to control my power and use it only for good." The creature gave her a long, probing look before answering, "Very well, Sarah. I believe you have the potential to make a positive change in this realm. But remember, it's not merely about using your power for good. It's also about how you treat others and your own intentions. The path to true righteousness is paved with humility, self-reflection, and compassion." The creature's words reverberated in Sarah's mind as she sat there, absorbing the magnitude of her newfound reality. The room felt like it was suddenly spinning around her, pushing her to question the very essence of her existence. What did it mean for her to be responsible? How could she prove herself worthy of this power? And what if she made a mistake? There was so much that came along with his newfound power. The responsibility it entailed was overwhelming. Images of accidental destruction flooded Sarah's mind. Fires raging beyond control. Buildings crumbling before her. Lives snuffed out by her unchecked abilities. The creature's dark eyes bored into her, weighing her potential for mastery against the uncertainty of her untested abilities. Sarah swallowed hard. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The creature regarded her with a steady gaze, the darkness within its eyes swirling like a tempestuous sea. "We have much to discuss, Sarah, and we have ample time to delve into the intricacies of this newfound bond between us. But first, you must understand that control is key. You cannot allow this power to consume you, or else it will lead to the very destruction you seek to avoid." A tense silence filled the air as Sarah nodded her understanding, her stomach tightening with nervous energy. The laboratory felt alien and suffocating, like a tomb that refused to relinquish its hold on her. But amid the relics and darkness, Sarah recognized an opportunity to harness her newfound abilities for good. The creature slowly rose to its feet, body crackling with dormant energy that rippled along its inky black silhouette. It paused and looked back at Sarah, studying her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Follow me, Sarah," it instructed, beckoning her towards an aging wooden door in the far corner of the room. Chapter 7. Opening the door to the basement felt both liberating and sinister, as if she had just unleashed an unstoppable force. The musty smell of decay wafted up towards her, a potent mixture of earth and rot. Sarah smudged her thumb against her nose as she stepped into the gloom, her breath coming short and shallow. Her eyes took a moment to adjust, the darkness wrapping itself around her like a cold shroud. She shuffled forward, her footfalls echoing hollowly against the cold, worn flags. Rows of dust-laden boxes towered above her, the air thick and stale, clinging to the walls as if reluctant to let go of the secrets they held. Cobwebs dangled precariously from the ceiling, their sticky tendrils an ever-present reminder of the time that had elapsed since her last descent into this forgotten abyss. Her fingertips brushed the damp walls, leaving traces of her touch behind, somehow tethering her to this world that had once belonged to her cherished ancestors. Sarah followed the path ahead, her determination propelling her through curiosity and apprehension. "Focus on your breath," the creature's voice reverberated gently inside her mind. "Allow your energy to flow in sync with each inhalation and exhalation. Like water, it should adjust to any form you choose. Begin with shaping it into a sphere." The darkness in front of Sarah swirled and solidified at her command. A small, pulsating ball of light emerged in her hand. Excitement surged through her as she experimented with her powers. Manipulating the size, shape, and intensity of the orb, Sarah felt a surge of connection to something far greater than herself. A low rumble as of thunder waved through the chamber, traveling her bones like ripples on water. She paused her experiments, feeling a sudden apprehension of the enormity of her gift. "Breathe, Sarah," the creature whispered in her mind. "Remember, your emotions govern your powers. Let them guide you, don't let them control you." The creature's soothing words eased Sarah's nerves, quieting her pounding heart as she returned her focus to the shimmering sphere in her hands. Slowly she began to practice, expanding and contracting the orb, feeling in rhythm with the world around her. Gently, she brushed the walls with glowing strands, tracing patterns of light as if weaving delicate threads of energy. Sarah spent what felt like hours experimenting with her newfound abilities, always mindful of the creature's guidance. The orb obeyed her every command, bending and contorting into various shapes, colors, and sizes. Sometimes she'd make it pulse with a gentle light to imitate a beating heart. Other times, she'd make it shoot tiny tendrils in every direction like solar flares. But the deeper Sarah delved into the intricacies of her powers, the more she realized that they went beyond mere control over her environment. There were nuances to her abilities, feelings and emotions that she intuitively knew would lead to extraordinary consequences. Rage made the sphere of energy explode like a miniature supernova, leaving charred remnants on the concrete floor. Extreme happiness intensified the light until it grew so bright that it filled the entire basement, casting Sarah's silhouette against the stone walls. Pure determination channeled a laser-like beam that indiscriminately obliterated everything in its path. These newfound powers unlocked a Pandora's box that might unleash chaos and destruction, all paved the way for healing and growth. Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to test her limits, wanting to see what else she could achieve with her newfound abilities. However, as the hours wore on, and Sarah found herself surrounded by the shadows and secrets of the basement, she felt an unsettling heaviness within her. Something about this room, this place where her ancestor had sought to harness eternal youth, filled her with a profound sense of unease. She could almost feel the malice and anger that had been pent up in this space for generations, pressing against her own emotions, attempting to force her to let go of her control. As the hours passed, Sarah began to understand how the darkness in this space had taken hold of her ancestor and corrupted him. The bond she shared with the creature that had once haunted him now warned her about the dangers of letting her emotions drive her abilities without restraint. The atmosphere began to shift as Sarah strengthened the barrier she had placed between herself and the dark energy of the basement. She noticed that with every passing moment, the energy brought forth by her emotions became more volatile. "Be mindful," the creature whispered gently inside her mind. "Channel your emotions carefully. They are powerful, but you must wield them with restraint and wisdom. Let's work together to focus this energy into something constructive." Sarah took a deep, steadying breath and nodded internally, accepting the creature's guidance. With renewed determination, she let her emotions surge, gently guiding the energy within the glowing orb hovering in the air before her. The darkness enveloping the basement seemed to respond, tendrils of gloom creeping forward, only to recoil at the brightness of her orb's pulsating light. Sarah felt a surge of powerful energy flowing through her, the feel of strength and purpose filling her core. "Now, manifest the energy within you," the creature instructed her. "Send it out, but remember to channel it, not let it loose." Bolstered by its firm voice, Sarah gathered her energy, imagining it condensing into a small ball within the center of her being. With a quick motion, she launched the burst of energy towards the shadows, aiming for where the darkness clung most thickly. The conclusion of the story, "The Basement Unveiled," ties together Sarah's journey into the basement, her confrontation with the creature, and the heavy legacy of her family's past. Here's a proposed ending. Sarah steadied herself, her heart pounding as the darkness surged and swirled before her. With the creature's guidance, she had come to understand the weight of her inheritance, not just the powers she now possessed, but the responsibility tied to a family's history. Her ancestors' ambition had bound this entity to their lineage, and now Sarah had the opportunity to break the cycle. Summoning her newfound abilities, Sarah focused her energy into a brilliant sphere of light, its pulsations resonating with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. The shadows recoiled at the intensity of the light, but they weren't defeated. The creature beside her, a blend of malevolence and reluctant companionship, spoke softly. "This is your moment, Sarah. The choice is yours. Free me and release us both from this cursed bond, or let the darkness remain, consuming all it touches." Sarah's mind raced. She saw her family's history flash before her eyes, the pain, the ambition, the sacrifices, and realized that the path forward lay not in destruction, but in redemption. She turned to the creature and whispered, "I will set us free." With a deep breath, Sarah unleashed the energy she had cultivated. The sphere expanded, filling the basement with light so pure and intense, it seemed to wash away the layers of darkness that had clung to the space for generations. The creature let out a roar, not of pain, but of release, as its form dissolved into streams of glowing particles that danced in the air before fading into nothingness. The oppressive energy in the basement dissipated, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. Sarah collapsed to the floor, exhausted but victorious. She had broken the bond, freeing both the creature and her family from the shadows of the past. As she ascended the basement stairs, the first rays of dawn filtered through the windows, illumining her home in a way she had never noticed before. Sarah realized she wasn't just leaving the basement behind. She was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one defined not by the weight of her family's mistakes, but by the strength she had found within herself to face them. From that day forward, Sarah vowed to honor the lessons she had learned, using her powers with wisdom and compassion. The basement remained empty, a quiet testament to the darkness she had overcome, and a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, light could prevail. If you like this story, and for more dark stories, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. See ya!